In this week's bulletin, finding a fair outcome for abuse survivors. Churches impacted by cyclone damage. And two friends separated by war offer forgiveness and comfort.
This is InFocus Christian News and Current Affairs.
Hello, thanks so much for joining us this special Easter weekend. And as they say in some churches, Cybèle, Christ is risen.
He is risen indeed, Kent.
Yes, it really is a special time of the year. And our guest today will help remind us of the significance of Easter through a unique performance art, spoken word. Micah Bournes is a big poet from Long Beach, California.
That sounds great. I'm not really a big fan of spoken word, but maybe I can be converted today.
Oh, dear me. She's a hard audience. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. I'll also be sitting down with Asif Mal to discuss some of the issues Christians face in the UK. Now, you're from the UK originally, Cybèle. You find that sort of resonates with you?
Absolutely. There's so many different cultural mixes to think about in the UK with Christianity.
Oh, okay. Well, all that in a little bit. First up, it's the news.
Thanks, Kent. Australia's Royal Commission into Institutional Responses to Child Abuse says a coordinated national response to survivors is needed, preferably one coordinated by the federal government. Representatives of a number of organisations that have appeared before the Commission are supportive of the idea, including the YMCA, victim support groups, Aboriginal organisations and the Catholic Church. According to the ABC, a Catholic spokesperson told the Commission that the days of the Church investigating itself are over. Instead, he said the organisations where abuse had occurred should fund a national compensation and support scheme, while the government should administer it. But, according to the ABC, the federal government has rejected the idea, saying it would take too much time and money to set up. The state of Victoria is set to encounter what is becoming a predictable clash of rights as its government prepares to legalise same-sex adoptions. According to The Age, some Christian groups are worried that faith-based adoption agencies will be charged with discrimination if they don't facilitate adoptions with same-sex couples. The Australian Christian Lobby has pointed to overseas adoption agencies that have closed their doors because their practices ran counter to anti-discrimination law. Catholic Care says church-based adoption agencies just want the protection to operate according to their principles. The relief effort is continuing in Vanuatu after Cyclone Pam destroyed homes, infrastructure and crops, affecting more than half the population of the country. Church buildings were not spared by the Category 5 storm, with less sturdy churches blown apart by the strong winds. The Seventh-day Adventist Church in Vanuatu is counting the cost as reports come in from various islands. So far, 18 churches are known to be completely destroyed and 10 damaged. 7 church schools have been destroyed and 7 pastors' homes have been destroyed. For the Adventist Church, the cyclone was badly timed. After record baptisms last year, they were already struggling to fit in all the worshippers.
The extent of the damage that the cyclone has caused is just truly beyond our means. There are people seeing me and talking to me and asking whether the mission will be in some sort of position to actually help. We really don't know where to start, you know. How can you help this church when you have 20 or so other churches lining up, you know, for some sort of help?
Amid the stories of violence and loss in the Middle East, the reunion of 2 school friends has touched the hearts of people around the region. 10-year-olds Miriam and Sandra were among the 50,000 residents of the Assyrian city of Karakosh in Iraq who fled as ISIS militants overran their region. Christian television station Sat7 interviewed Miriam, who impressed the host with her commitment to forgiveness.
أنت حاسة بإيه ناحية الناس اللي ممكن تبقى خرجتك من البيت وتعبتك؟
ما راح أسويهم ولا شيء، بس يعني أقول لله يسامحهم. هوني كان عندي صديقة اسمها ساندرا وكنا أنا وهي كل اليوم مع بعضنا.
عارفة هي فين خالص صح؟
لا.
The interview sparked a search for Miriam's friend, who was eventually found in Lebanon. Sandra seemed overwhelmed to hear her friend's voice, Miriam comforted her in their native language and the language of Jesus, Assyrian.
لا بخيت ساندرا
طلعي قدامك ساندرا قدامك هي شايفتك هون
لا تبكين
ساندرا طلعي قدامك
صديقتي لا تبكين.
In some parts of the world, church groups are fighting to legally preserve Sunday as a shared day for rest. But an ongoing court battle in Brazil highlights the complications of governments legislating working hours. João Francisco de Nascimento has been operating a petrol station since the year 2000. In all that time, the business has closed every Saturday in keeping with the fourth commandment. Mr. Nascimento is a Seventh-day Adventist. His decision has attracted 2 fines from Brazil's oil industry regulator, which enforces a Monday to Saturday working week. According to the Adventist Review, Mr. Nascimento refused to pay the fines and won his first court case on the matter on religious freedom grounds. The industry regulator has indicated it will appeal the verdict. The success of last year's movie Heaven is for Real has highlighted the popularity of accounts of people who say they've seen heaven. But a major Christian bookstore in the US is less enthusiastic. According to Christianity Today, Lifeway Christian Resources has taken the so-called Heaven Tourism books off the shelves of their 200 stores around America. The move appears to be prompted by a Southern Baptist Convention resolution warning against using popular books and movies to understand the afterlife, rather than the teachings of the Bible. Another factor may be the admission by the co-author of the popular book The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven that he lied about his experience. Despite these setbacks, Heaven Tourism books are still selling strongly. After months of fundraising and renovation, Australian volunteers will soon launch a floating ambulance that will serve the needs of remote villages in Solomon Islands. The new project builds on the success of Medisonship, a mobile clinic service that has been providing vital health services to the Western Solomons, as well as bringing the message of the gospel. Medisonship 2 is a smaller, faster boat that will be able to help in emergencies, bringing first aid to patients quickly and transporting them to the closest clinic or hospital. The plan to christen the boat by cracking a couple of coconuts against the hull didn't quite go to plan, but everything else appears to be shipshape. And that's the news for this week. Kent?
Thanks, Cybèle. We'll be right back with Asif Mal to talk about religious freedom issues in the UK. See you shortly.
Travel back in time to ancient civilizations through this bi-monthly magazine, Archaeological Diggings. This month, Diggings looks at the Shroud of Turin, one of the most studied artifacts in history. But is it really Jesus as claimed? We explore how ancient Egyptians not just adored, but literally worshipped their pets. And we also bring you the latest news from the fascinating world of archaeology. Don't miss an issue. Subscribe online or ask for Archaeological Diggings at your local newsagent.
Hello, welcome back, and it's great to have Asif Mal with us from Release International. How are you, Asif?
Very good. Good to see you, Kent, as well.
Yeah. Now, Asif, you're based in the UK. I've never been to the UK. One time I'll have to, visit where my convict ancestors came from. But I do sort of hear, through my email and that sort of thing, Christians there say it's really tough being a Christian in the UK, which seems strange. But what do they mean? Or is it true?
There are challenges, obviously, Christians are facing, and obviously you might have heard about certain cases. Cases like a Christian woman who was fired from her job from British Airways simply because she was wearing a cross.
This was against the uniform policy, wasn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
But you see that there is no inconsistency is the sign of a failed argument, and that's illogical.
Because if I was a Sikh, for example, working for British Airways and I was wearing a bracelet that's a part of my religion,
correct,
that's fine.
They should respect that. So that's the sort of situation we're talking about. And then we have cases where a Christian couple who were running this bed and breakfast fined by the court simply because they did not allow a unmarried couple to stay in their bed and breakfast. because they said that it's against our Christian values, and so that was considered a discrimination. And then there are many comedy programs which are there to ridicule the tenets of Christian faith and Christian practice. Vicar of Dibley, for example, one, and there are others as well.
Yeah, but Asif, I mean, you're from Pakistan originally, and so you know the situation for Christians in Pakistan, for example, a lot better than I do. How can some Christians say we're being persecuted? They're making fun of us on television. I mean, really, is this really persecution, or are Christians just being a bit too sensitive?
Yes, it's a good question. It's not the sort of persecution where you are in the danger of getting killed. Public humiliation and subjecting you to that and on a constant basis in this way, and firing you from your job just because you are wearing a cross and those kind of things, I think they are more of a discrimination, but they are very much at the borderline with discrimination and persecution.
It seems a strange thing because, of course, in the UK, the official state church is the Church of England. The Queen is the head of the Church of England. And nevertheless, Christians are somehow feeling marginalised in that community. It's a strange contradiction.
I think it's because it has ended up becoming a very post-Christian kind of society, and so they will show a lot of sensitivity to other religions. They wouldn't make similar sort of programs about other major religions in the world because they want to be sensitive to and do not want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Because it's a minority group.
Correct. But when it comes to Christians, it's a fair game. So so we are asking is consistency on part of the various broadcasting institutions, and not discriminating this way.
Do you see a solution to these things? I mean, obviously, Christians can complain and say we're not being treated fairly, but is that going to get them very far, or are there actual, workable strategies that can be put into place to basically make the UK a fair society for all religions?
I think that because Christians have always kind of taken it like lying down, as I say. I think that what they need to do is to actually challenge these things, both on the social level, in the parliament, in the courts as well, if necessary. And so there are now a few groups who are doing that. So I think that the Christians need to take the responsibility and be the voice they need to be, because we're supposed to be salt and light. And if the salt does not give us taste, or the light stops its function, and then it has to kind of blame itself and nobody else. And so Christians, the moment they will, I think, start to be more of a salt and light in the society, make their fingerprints and their mark known.
I struggle with what you're saying a little bit, Asif, because I see the example of Jesus as someone who never spoke up to defend himself. He spoke up to defend other people.
Correct.
And when he talked about salt and light, he was talking about doing good works to other people. He wasn't talking about, going to court or going to Parliament to defend, fellow believers. How do you make sense of that?
In terms of turning the other cheek is not taking personal revenge. But if we're both Christians and somebody slaps you and I don't do anything, and that should be an issue of justice for me. I should raise the voice. I should try to stop that person, because on the day of judgment I will be asked, well, he turned the other cheek, but you were there. It was an issue of justice for you, and I'm a God of justice. What did you do there then?
Okay, so how did you step in for your fellow Christian who you saw being persecuted? We have a duty to one another.
Absolutely.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's very thought-provoking. Thanks so much for your time today, Asif.
Most welcome.
Signs of the Times, a magazine for a world on the brink. And this month in Signs, we reflect on 100 years of the Anzac tradition, how the health of your heart can affect your ability to hear. We look at the history of the cruel manner of Jesus' execution, and we find out why he had to die. All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. That's just part of what makes it all so amazing. And that's why a great education matters. Because it doesn't just help you get a great job. It helps you prepare for what life can throw at you and live a great life. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
Hi, welcome back. Well, when I was at school studying English, I think a lot of us in my class would have rather stick pins in our eyes than study poetry. but Micah Bournes here is making poetry hip along with the whole spoken word movement. Is that right, Micah?
Well, I don't think I'm making poetry hip, but yeah, no, I think a lot of people's stereotype of poetry and introduction to poetry is kind of Shakespearean and antiquated English and confusing metaphors and things like that, which is, it's just hard for the general public to really feel connected to that. And
do you get into the dead white guys with poetry? Can you appreciate them? Or?
When I was growing up, I had zero appreciation for them, because most of the time it just seemed to be from a time and a culture that was so disconnected from who I was. I didn't feel like it had anything to say to me. Now, as I'm older, I can appreciate it to some degree, but with spoken word, I got into it because when I was in college, a friend of mine invited me to this open mic event, he said, for spoken word, and I'd seen it on YouTube, but never in real life, and I went, and it was poetry, absolutely, but it was in language I could understand. They used modern language, and they talked about things that seemed relevant to where I was at the time, and things that I was thinking through. And so it was much more accessible, but also not just in the language they used, but spoken word has a theatrical element to it. So it was a lot more engaging than just kind of a dry poetry reading where you have monotone voice the whole time. There was highs and lows, roller coaster, people using a lot of body language. It felt almost like theater. So it struck me, and the first time I saw it, I said, man, I'd like to give that a try. Wow.
So, I mean, spoken word versus rap or hip-hop, where's the connection or the difference there?
Yeah, they're definitely popular in similar communities. You'll find them pretty popular in urban minority communities, but they are different. Spoken word often is performed without music behind, and also it doesn't always rhyme. So there's elements. It's free-form poetry. There's elements of it that even without rhyme can create a sense of rhythm and poetry. Repetition is used, and other things like that. But I feel like they're cousins, hip hop and spoken word. They're related, but the biggest difference, I think, from spoken word from other forms of poetry is the fact that it's written with the intent to be performed with the whole body, and you approach it different. Even hip hop. Like, yes, it's a performance and people rap live, but spoken word, I think, is a little more intentional about the body language, as far as you'll write a poem, but then you'll go back and you will kind of write the body movements and
so the gesture is as much part of the poem as the words themselves.
Exactly. Spoken word poets are very intentional about what they do with their body to add another layer of communication and artistry, whereas hip hop and other forms of music and things like that, a lot of times you're just kind of jumping around, and you don't think through it as much as what you do with your body when you perform.
What about spiritual content? Because I know, like, if you just go up on the street and speak to someone about spiritual things, they might, but there seems to be certain artistic mediums where you can get away with being quite forceful, even preachy. I think reggae, for example, reggae lyrics, very spiritually inclined, and even rap and spoken word. Do you find that people will accept things, quite strong spiritual concepts in spoken word that they might not accept in normal conversation?
The spoken word community is an incredibly spiritual community in the sense of, I don't say that in the Christian context, but in the sense of, you often hear people talk about spiritual things, whether it be justice, right and wrong, whether it be spiritual practices of meditating and praying and seeking truth. And that was one of the first things I realized as well. It was like, this community is not afraid of spiritual conversation. Actually, they invite it. What they don't invite is Christianese. And what I realized was I think a lot of times as Christians, people think, oh, people, as Christian artists especially, they won't like our art because it's Christian, and it's just not true. Music as well, there's a lot of genres of music that are very spiritual in the things that they discuss, but when you use language that is so particular to people who grew up in church, you know, even, and I'm not just talking about huge
insider language.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not just talking about huge doctrinal terms like hypostatic union, but even things like mercy, grace, redemption, things that we take for granted. But when you think about the word salvation and redemption, like, what does that mean to someone who didn't grow up in church? They may recognize the word salvation, but to a Christian, it means something different. Yeah. And so we can't just use that and expect people outside of the faith to know what we mean when we say that. And so I found that in my poetry, I've attempted to talk about spiritual things, but to use a vocabulary that is accessible to people who didn't grow up in the Christian church or culture and don't really know what those words mean.
Which, of course, is how the New Testament was written, in street Greek, Koine Greek, yeah. Do you find that there are spiritual themes you keep returning to again and again in your work?
I think hope is a big one. Spoken word lends itself to vulnerability, as I mentioned. Yeah. But I think a lot of people can praise the vulnerability as if that is the goal. Yeah. In the sense of, it's like, oh, if we just get all of these things off of our chest,
just
then
spill
that'll
your
be
guts,
good.
as they say.
Yeah. And I think there's value in that, but the confession is not the healing. Yeah. It's the first step, you know. But after that, what do you do with that? And I think that a lot of times spoken word fails to answer that. It's just a lot of, I went through this and I was abused, or I was hurt, or I was brokenhearted, and it feels good to get it out. But after a while of being in that environment for a while, I thought, well, I'm glad you guys are being honest, but like, I just felt like people were commiserating. Like, we would go to these open
Poor
mics.
us, yeah.
And they would just, I always say it like this. It seemed like the poets were saying, life sucks, but it's better since it sucks for all of us. You know? And I was like, well, that
misery
doesn't
loves
make it,
company.
Exactly. That doesn't make it better. Like, and so after that, then what? And I think that's something that only Christians can really say something after the then what. Because, I mean, as Paul said in 1 Corinthians, hey, you know, if Christ did not resurrect, our faith is futile. Nothing matters. You know, like, all it is commiserating and making the most of death, because he says, hey, if the dead are not raised, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. You know, and he says that actually is the reality. We're just trying to make the best of this life that is slowly slipping away from us. He says that's the reality if Christ didn't resurrect, but he did. So now we can step into that pain, we can step into that death and look at it straight in the eye and say, where is your victory? Where is your sting? You have none. And so I think that has been one of the themes of being just as vulnerable as other poets in the community, but bringing something that uniquely someone of Christian faith can bring, and that is hope beyond death.
Wow. So you're saying it's hurting, yeah, fair enough, but time to move on to the hope and the healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's an important message, I guess, for Easter as much as anything. Yeah. Now, you've been here for the Manifest Arts Festival. You're also performing at Easter Fest as well, which is, that should be awesome.
That is my latest album. It's called Alive and Ill.
Alive and Ill, not live and well, live and ill, but still alive, which is important.
Absolutely.
And you're going to come after the break and perform. Is it a track from this album?
Yeah, it's called Dry Bones, second to last track on that album.
Excellent, Dry Bones. Yeah, Micah Bournes gets prophetic, coming up straight after the break.
Thousands of years ago, a series of ancient prophecies were disguised within a system of mysterious symbols. For centuries, these remarkable predictions have been sealed to the world until now. Check out our new Secrets of Prophecy online course today in 24 beautifully illustrated free studies at www.itiswrittenoceania.tv or call 1300 300 389 for your free copy today.
Planning your future can be a daunting task. What you want to do, who you want to be, and the road ahead can often be unpredictable. No one really knows what the future holds. Avondale. It's education designed for life.
spoken word has a way of turning ugliness into beauty. It's like the more I mess up, the better my writing, and I guess I'm trying to be the best poet ever. I know this muck I'm in resulted from my own decision, so why do I feel like I never would have chose this? Let me assure you, this was not my plan A. Standing on stages, telling rooms full of strangers about the billions of ways I've failed. And when it's over, they cheer and say, you did so well. And it's nice to know that other people can relate to my flaws, but I pray our aim is greater than commiseration. Whether it's my sin or someone else's, there's a difference between being authentic and crass, courageously truthful and putting people on blast. When the prophet Nathan rebuked King David, it was not to bring him shame, but to bring him to his knees in repentance. I have sinned against God and God alone. I swear my sole motivation for pointing out the mud on anyone's face is so they can be clean. And the only reason I display the skeletons in my closet is to show how God makes dry bones live again. Blessed is the man whose sins are forgiven. If my public disgrace brings freedom to your secrets, so be it. But don't call yourself speaking the truth if all you do is confess. Complain. If your aim is only to get it all out, then you'll finish feeling empty, not relieved. If death is the end, there is no beauty in lament. You're either dead or you're dying. Stop trying to make it pretty with rhymes. Truth with no hope is no better than hope that isn't true. Don't dare you waste my time railing against everything we already know is wrong. Neither do I need your optimistic naivety. Things are going to get better. Just believe in yourself. Ill-placed faith in my own strength is what created this hell in the first place. If we held the cure to our disease, we wouldn't be sick. We all need something greater to believe in. Greater than ourselves, greater than our sin. If we don't believe in greater, then we're letting death win. Resurrection is our only hope. Not merely souls floating through a golden city in the sky, but corpses rising from the grave, scattered ashes reconvening into human beings and breathing again, hearts beating again, God speaking again, proclaiming it is good, again and forever. Forever now we live resurrected. Yes, we live resurrected even before death. Resurrection begins with faith. Believers see new life manifested every day. Every day we are healed from sin's death, no longer separated, at peace with God and neighbor and enemy and nature, no longer takers. We give our lives. If we die with him, we will rise with our Lord. Embrace your crucifixion. Believe. Death has no more dominion over Christ. Touch his immortal wounds and see. Death has no more dominion over us. Death has no more dominion over me. Pain becomes poetry. Ugliness is beautiful. The beautiful one beaten beyond recognition. The most grotesque injustice ever committed is now our only source of hope. The word of God said, it is finished. Fell dead silent. And on the third day, he spoke.